Hello and welcome to our complimentary webinar, which is brought to you today in partnership with Customer Driven and USU. And it's entitled UX Now, Best Practice for Knowledge-Based Writing. In the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and during that time, with the help of today's special guests, Leslie, Nicola and Carmen, we hope to spark your interest and engage you in the conversation, as well as provide some ideas to take back to your respective businesses. To round off the session, we'll be having a Q&A at the end of the webinar. I'm Fiona Keogh, CEO of Auscontact, and your moderator for today. While we're waiting for everyone to join us, let's use the time to quickly run through some housekeeping. Remember to interact with us to maximise the benefit. And as you know, there's no need to take too many notes because we'll be providing you with the recording of the webinar and a special gift if you stay in the webinar. To interact with us, please use the Q&A button on the control panel. You can ask questions or make comments for Leslie, Nicola, Carmen or myself from time to time. Don't forget, we're having that full Q&A at the end of the webinar, so please type your questions as we go along so you don't forget to ask them. If you're listening through headphones, speakers and experience any issues with your internet connection, please note that on the control panel you can click the raise hand button and the Auscontact team will rush to your aid. Or you can revert to your registration confirmation email and all the relevant phone numbers and access codes are available there for you. I know that many of you are familiar with asking questions, but let's try out the Q&A button on the control panel, just in case. And the question for today is, and I do love a good trick question, it is, which season commences tomorrow, the 1st of September, in Australia? Oh, Roberta, oh, Georgia, so quick. My goodness, the hands on those keyboards, so quick. Wonderful. Sandra, Elise, Gavin, Tegan, Jessica, Kira, Patrick, you all got it. Margaret, Maddie, and the list goes on. The answer is spring. And aren't we all ready to welcome spring in? So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make you do a little bit more work and we're going to run a poll. Just if I could get you to launch the kickoff poll for us today. So I love this. If you had unlimited time and unlimited money, what would you do first to improve your knowledge base? Would you buy new software, write the knowledge base articles, or hire a dedicated person to manage the knowledge base? Now, Nicola, you guys are seeing quite a bit of this in Customer Driven. What would you be doing first with your unlimited funds and time?
Oh my gosh, unlimited funds and time. I want to do everything, to be honest. I couldn't tell you where to start. I think depending on where you're at, you know, it could be new software just so that you can support with the rewriting of your knowledge base. But if you've got good software, then you could just start with checking out your knowledge base articles and seeing where you can improve. So it could really be any of the above. And then definitely if you don't have anyone currently managing it, then I'll be talking a little bit today around, you know, best practice and how you can improve your knowledge base, and certainly having dedicated resources to that will certainly help as well.
Fantastic. Well, the most popular response today is they need somebody to manage. 57% said they need somebody that can actually manage the knowledge base. 20% are going to buy new software and 22% need to rewrite what they've already got. So it looks like we have huge opportunities ahead of us. So with that, let's introduce more formally our speakers today. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome 3 new voices to the webinar. And firstly, I'd love to welcome Leslie O'Flaverhaven, owner of eWrite, Nicola McDonald, the Head of Knowledge Management at Customer Driven, and Carmen Hermy, Partner Manager at USU. So with that, a fantastic welcome. And Nicola, you're going to kick off, but before you get into the formal slides, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Certainly. Thank you, Fiona. So hi, as Fiona has mentioned, my name is Nicola McDonald, and I am the head of knowledge management at Customer Driven. So we run a team of knowledge management professionals who can help organisations with all kinds of knowledge management problems and concerns. So we can start through health checks and discoveries, right through to system selection, implementation, and then ongoing maintenance. So my team has a wide range of skills when it comes to knowledge management and how to manage your knowledge. And that is basically what we are doing at Customer Driven, jumping in and getting organisations going on that journey. So without further ado, I am going to jump straight into these slides. And today, when I started thinking about what we wanted to talk about today in what is knowledge management best practice, there was a few things that kind of came to mind. And I was toying with the idea with you, Leslie, around, I suppose, well, we've got a few things that we can talk about. We can talk about best practice tools. We can talk about best practice writing standards. There's also best practice ongoing maintenance. And all of those areas I'm definitely passionate about. And how do we bring all of that together? And as I started fleshing this out, I came back to Customer Driven's wheel, and Customer Driven love a good wheel. And we've got one in knowledge management that is called the KM8 Methodology. And this works through, or I suppose, talks to the 8 elements and features and that we believe are crucial in maintaining a good knowledge base. So how do we ensure that a knowledge management solution has the features to support these? And I suppose the framework is then what processes can we sit underneath that to ensure that we're able to build and maintain an effective knowledge base. So this methodology, it certainly informs, our system selection. So what we're looking for from a feature perspective, it informs our project build. And then as we move into the next phase, it will also inform your ongoing maintenance. So the first piece of this puzzle, or this wheel, I should say, is our content piece. And Customer Driven, we've got our 4 design principles. So anytime we are working in a knowledge base, these are the 4 things that we are always keeping front of mind. And the first one here is targeted information. So when we're looking at knowledge bases and what we could do from a system point of view, we want to make sure that we've got the ability to target information to users. We want those users to be able, am I still sharing my screen?
Oh, yes, you are. Everything looks great.
Sorry, apologies everyone. So we want those users to be able to find the piece of information that they need at their time of need. There's nothing worse than being, yelled at on the phone. You're trying to find that information and you're finding all of the information that are relevant to other teams. So the ability for a knowledge base to be able to target that information through the use of permissions and permissioning content to users' roles is really crucial to supporting them to get good results and fast results in that knowledge base. The second design principle that we believe in is quick to find. So we look for tools that are going to support your users to find information in multiple ways. So the first one is a search, a good search. And many users these days are really used to the Google search. So they are looking for a system that is going to support them with that Google type search. And there are a lot of applications out there now that are building those search capabilities. We also want to make sure that the system can help users to find information based on a topic. They might not know exactly what document they're looking for, so a search might be a little bit harder. But if we can build a welcome page for them that has different categories of information and they can click in. So we know that my customer's wanting to make a change to their account. I'm going to go into the account maintenance area and land on an index that has all of the information that I need in order to solve an account maintenance inquiry. And the third and final way that we make sure people are able to find information quickly is through the folder structure. And it's really crucial when users are going to navigate through a folder structure that you've got fantastic information architecture. So it needs to be logical for your users to click through those folders and move into the area that they're after. Otherwise, if you've got a mess of a folder structure where everything is just in one area, it's going to be extremely difficult for your users to quickly find that information. And I suppose by giving them those, at least those 3 options to find information, it means that if I haven't found it through my first preference, I'm going to be able to quickly switch my tools and switch my tactic in order to find that information that I'm after. The third principle that we've got is around making it simple. So there is definitely a lot of jargon and a lot of acronyms, and some organizations even have to throw in those legal terms, and it is very complex. So you want to make sure that you are supporting your users to understand that information as easily as possible. So using things like pop-ups, or where you can hover over a word and have extra information appear to explain what an acronym means, or using glossaries and links out to those glossaries when there are those complex terms that we can't really change in the content there. We also talk to making it simple when we think about the different user groups that will be in your knowledge base. We usually see, a really new user group who potentially have just come out of the training room. They're about to take their first call, and it is terrifying. I have been in that situation, and it was terrifying. I can still tell you to this day. And so as that user, I really need my knowledge base to hold my hand from start to finish of that inquiry, to tell me exactly what I need to be doing without actually having to make me think too much about it. But then again, we've also got our tenured users in the database, and they could be there for 2-3 years. They've pretty much got everything down pat. They know what they're doing, but they might just need to go in for small snippets of information. For example, we've had clients that had really strict compliance scripting that they needed to read. So they had to go into these documents to find that script to make sure that they were reading it word for word. And so when you consider those two user groups, how do we use the same piece of information and make it simple for both of them? And so we really talk about using applications that allow you to layer that content. And what we mean by layering is potentially either sectioning down tasks so that they're kind of short and sharp and you can jump between them to find the information that you're after. Or alternatively, some offer things like drop-down menus. So you can say, click here for more information. And that gives me as the user the option to ask for that additional information without losing my spot in the procedure there. So that allows your new users to say, yes, I need this extra support, versus your tenured user to say, I'm good here, I know how to do this part, and I'm just going to skip forward. Additionally, with making it simple, one of the things we do see when we go into organizations is that a lot of people are coming from places where they just have all of their information in relation to a topic in the one document. And you see users having to resort to Control F type find their keywords so that they can skip all the other information. And I suppose what we look for with our applications is the ability to use designated templates. And those templates would mean that when I know that I'm opening a procedure, I know that I'm going to find my step-by-step information, and that's all that's going to be there. So how do I actually complete my task? Versus, I suppose, overview information or information that I might just need to refer to, like a fee or a code or anything like that, that can be housed outside of that in separate templates so that I know as a user what I'm going to find. There's nothing worse than going into something and it's different every time and going, oh my gosh, I don't know where to look. And I know when I'm using designated templates, I know where that information is going to be found. And the fourth piece that we've got here on our design principles is treating content as dynamic. And what we mean when we say dynamic content is content that is easily updated and that is constantly updated. So there's no point in our book in creating, aesthetically beautiful content if it's going to take you 2 weeks to update it because it's so complicated in the back end to get that to update. That is one of the fastest ways to lose your end users' engagement, is when they go in and they say, well, the content's not there, it's not right, I know that it's changed, so therefore I'm not going to use it. We have seen so many different clients and so many different problems and so many different ways of doing things, I suppose. But some of the common issues that we see is that users go into their tool, and if they are unable to find their document really quickly, so they might do a search, and if they don't know the exact search term, they get no results. Or they might go into that document, as I said, and it's so complicated, there's so much information in there that they just don't know where to start. And so what we see in these types of organizations is that your agents will resort to survival techniques. They will go, there is no point in using this knowledge base because it's too hard. And what we see with survival techniques, one of the common ones is that it's easier for me to put my customer on hold and wait for my neighbor who's still on a call to finish their call and ask for their help, because that's just, rather than going into my knowledge base. Or it's easier for me to put my hand up and wait for a team leader or a floor walker who's walking around to come and help me. And that's just an inefficient way of using, I suppose, those resources' time. You've now got two people who are trying to serve one customer, and potentially one person who's meant to be in the call queue waiting for the next call, who's out of call work, helping their neighbor. So That's the first one that we see. And the second one is people creating their own knowledge bases. And this one, you know, when you walk through a contact center, you can see people have sticky notes all over their computers, or they've got their OneNote that's up there and they're typing away frantically in their OneNote. And I think as a sort of worst case scenario that we've seen, I had one gentleman come up to me after we were training them on their new system. And he came up to me and he said, "Oh, thank God this is coming through. I can now throw out my knowledge base." And I said to him, "What do you mean throw it out?" And he's pulled out this folder, and it would have been about 3 or 4 kilos. It would have been so heavy because it was so big. And he was carrying around his own knowledge base. So let alone actually finding information in that, flicking through really quickly to try and find it when you're solving a customer inquiry. But for the risk for that organization is that you have no idea what that person has in their knowledge base. It's ungoverned information that is going out to your customers, and it could potentially be out of date and completely incorrect. So they're the kind of risks, I suppose, you see. And in order to overcome those types of things, you really want to have a trusted single source of truth. And that is what you want your knowledge base to become. So by following these design principles and making sure that your content is easy to find and easy to read and understand, your users are going to be happy enough to go in there and find that information and use it in their knowledge base. So secondly here, the next piece we wanted to talk to was feedback. And one of the common questions I hear when I go into these organizations was, "No, we don't get that much feedback, but isn't that a good thing?" And I suppose that makes me almost fall off my chair. It's feedback is a really good sign of an engaged user group, and your feedback can range from a wide range of things. It could be there's a typo or this link is incorrect, and they are really simple fixes, but it's good to see that your users are pointing them out to you because they're using the system and they're saying, "Hey, this one's not quite right." Versus, you know, I was on a call and this was really, really clunky and really hard to manage. So through sending the feedback through the tool and making it easy for your users to send that feedback, you're giving them, I suppose, a sense of ownership of the tool. And we think that is an excellent thing. We don't say ownership in the sense that your users can go in and write wiki style, but giving them the sense of, when I tell you that something's not right, there's going to be something that's looked into. It's not just going to be left on the sideline to be forgotten about. We really want your users to be engaged with the tool, and feedback is their key way to let you know when something is wrong. The next thing, I suppose, on feedback that we see is, as I said, a lot of the time feedback is there, but it's just not the priority, and users or knowledge managers just don't have the time to actually acknowledge that feedback or actually update based on that feedback. And when I speak to some of these clients, I say, "Well, what are we meant to do? What are we meant to do when we get that feedback?" And I always say to them, well, the first thing is actually to engage with your users. So thank them for that feedback, not the second, but, you know, within a reasonable time frame, thank them for sending that through to you. And if it is something as simple as there was a typo or there was a broken link, letting them know that you fixed it up pretty quickly for them. Not all feedback is going to be able to be answered that quickly, but if we are thanking them for their feedback, letting them know we're looking into it, we can take that feedback back to the business, back to your subject matter experts and all your stakeholders to say, "Hey, what can we actually do to fix this up for the user?" And I think the most I saw in an organization, the faces of the agents light up when they actually got confirmation back from their knowledge managers to say, "Hey, we've done it." So it might take a little bit of time, but we kept you updated along the way. And now we're confirming that we've actually made that change for you. And the users used to say things like, "Wow, see how that document changed? I was the one who initiated that, or I let them know that it was wrong." And it gives them that sense of ownership that the tool and what they are using, and it is their tool, is going to be able to be updated to suit their needs. So I'm going to jump a few pieces of our wheel, because the next one here that I really wanted to talk to you about today is analytics. And analytics is where my team and myself get so excited. This is where the bread and butter is, I suppose, in knowledge management. And having a knowledge management tool that actually provides you with this data is what you need, because you can learn so much from your analytics. The first thing that you would start to consider, and it is one of the easier reports to look at, is your usage. So what documents are people actually using, and what patterns can I see coming from that? So that will give you a really good understanding, I suppose, of what's working and potentially what's either not working or what's an inquiry type that we don't see all that often. When you start to look at all of this data, we can start to see a lot of patterns coming through. So you can look at I've got a really tenured user group and they're accessing these documents, and across the board with that tenure group, it's quite consistent that they're hitting these documents. And with that, I suppose you can start to consider, well, they've been here a while. Why are they needing to go to that document so frequently? Is it because this is a really complex inquiry? And if it's complex and our agents are finding it complex, then of course your customers are also going to be finding that a really frustrating inquiry type to get through as well. So taking that information and looking at that data, you can start to do some insights sessions with your agents and start to understand exactly where those problems are. It might be, no, we use those documents because there is compliance steps that we need to follow. Or it might be, yeah, this is a common one that all of our customers get really frustrated with, and it is quite a difficult process. So with that information, you can then go back to your business and you can start to look at ways that you can improve your KM environment, but also improve your processes and improve your customer experience at the end of the day, which is what we all want to be improving. We have been in a really interesting situation with a couple of our clients where we were able to tie our KM data in with some performance data and call data, which was a really powerful tool that we started to present back to our customers. And what we were able to do was start to see, I suppose, the correlation between, we had some really tenured users and they had the lowest handle time and the lowest hold time. They also had some of the higher KM data, or KM usage. So we were starting to correlate that with the higher usage, we were able to see those reductions in their call times. Versus, I suppose, tying in with some of the performance data, we had some agents who were consistently having compliance breaches, and we were able to see, well, they had lower access in their KM, and even down to the point of, well, they didn't actually access any documents that relate to that inquiry type that they had a compliance breach on. So all of that information can really start to paint a really interesting picture, and it can be quite powerful to take that back and have, I suppose, performance conversations with those agents to say, well, we can see what's going on here. And if we start using this knowledge base and start improving our access here, we might be able to start to reduce some of those compliance breaches there. So that was quite interesting. So overall, as I mentioned, this KM8 methodology really does influence your overall governance of a knowledge management system. And governance will apply from day one of your project right through to your ongoing maintenance. And having a tool that supports you with things like workflow is critical. So the workflow within a knowledge management solution will support you to make sure that the right people with the right accountabilities are signing off your content and making sure that we've got the tick of approval that that is what you want your agents to be doing and to be saying. It supports you to maintain quality checks of your environment. You can send it through workflow to make sure you're adhering to all your styles and standards. So as we were saying before, we want to make sure that our documents are consistent. When I go into a template that's for a procedure, I know where I'm going to find my information and how to read that, because it's a consistent template. So that quality check can really help ensure those styles and standards are met across your database. And then I suppose when customer driven are working with our clients, we heavily rely on these workflows because we go through quite a strict process end to end for every document that we write into an environment. We will go through a draft one into a quality check on our side. So for those styles and standards, we'll then make any further updates that we need on the back of that before we send it out to the client. And when it gets to the client, we go to SME review and they'll be answering any questions. They'll be telling us where anything might not be quite right, if we need to make any changes. And then they send it back to us and we do a final update of that content before sending it out for approval. And that is quite a lengthy process, but it ensures that your database has the right information in there for when you go live. And the benefit of these tools is that it maintains all of that information in the audit trail of your database. So if you go into your document, you can see Leslie signed off on this content. She signed off on the 15th of April, and that's what we were saying from this date. And you can see every change that goes on in there. So I've also been part of a knowledge management external audit, and it was extremely painful. But having the support of my knowledge base that had all of that information, it did make it much easier. So if you are in an industry that is potentially heavily audited, these workflows and these audit trails are absolutely critical in maintaining that information. So we do find KM can sort of be one of those things that organizations feel, you know, we've set it up, now we can forget about it. But it is, as we said, we want to treat that environment and all of your content as dynamic. We want to make sure that we're constantly updating in line with what's going on in the business. And these workflows will support you to make sure that all of that goes through suitable channels. And so I suppose by implementing a strong governance structure, you're looking to maintain that single source of truth. You help maintain the user's engagement and the user's trust in the tool. And the final slide for me today is this new, or not so new anymore, but the buzzword that's going on in the KM industry at the moment, which is KM for Omnichannel. And I suppose Omnichannel in our world is the ability to provide knowledge to your customer through the channel of their choice. And recently there's been some studies that have been done that have shown that particularly through COVID, globally, there was an increase of 22% of customers trying to self-serve and actually starting their journeys online themselves. And so I suppose if we are starting to see this push into the digital channels, the benefit of pushing the information that you've already created for your agents to serve to your customers, if we can curate that slightly differently and push it out through whichever channels you have, so whether that be your website, your FAQs, your chatbot, you might even be cooking dinner and you're talking to Amazon Alexa about whether or not you're able to do something with a particular company. If you can actually serve your knowledge manager, your approved content from your KM out into those channels, you'll certainly be able to reduce your call volume for one, and also increase your customer satisfaction, because you're going to be able to resolve those inquiries in the channel that they are actually seeking, rather than getting them frustrated. They haven't been able to solve it here, and now I have to call the contact center. So we are seeing that corporates are starting to recognize this move, and they are starting to have that conversation of how do we solve this and how do we actually navigate this digital world. And in response to that, there's a lot of the contemporary knowledge management solutions out there at the moment that have either solved it or in the process of solving how their solution can actually speak out to all of these different channels and help you to maintain your single source of truth. You're still getting all of that information approved and governed in your knowledge management solution. But then how can we actually share that little bit wider? So stay tuned. This will be an interesting space in the knowledge management world. And on that note, I will thank everyone for listening to me drag on about best practice KM. And Leslie, I think it is time that I will hand over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nicola. I really appreciate it. We got to do a poll.
Yes, we're going to get everybody working. So, and Leslie, while you start, so Jess is going to share a poll. And the question for you all is, what kinds of writing fixes does your knowledge base articles need? They need to focus on helping people follow steps in a process. They need a good proofreading to correct errors in spelling, punctuation and grammar. They just need to be rewritten so they share a consistent style and format. Or they need better titles. Now, Leslie, you work with a lot of organisations. What are you typically seeing as being the biggest challenge?
It's a terrible answer for a poll, but I do see all of the above. However, that I admit that's a terrible answer. So I think usually they need to be altered. Number 3, they need to be rewritten so they share a consistent style and format, which is certainly something Nicola spoke to us about. If you're in a procedure, knowledge-based article, it should look like a procedure every time you come to one. But what did the poll reveal?
The poll revealed that they need to focus on helping people follow the steps in a process. And I guess probably that comes a little bit from, I'm going to say the Royal Commission, where compliance is, I'm going to say queen, not king, because it's infiltrated everywhere. So with that, Leslie, I'm going to hand the microphone to you. But before you launch into your slides, we'd like to know a little bit more about you as well.
My pleasure. And my name's Leslie O'Flahaven. My company is called eWrite. That's E-WRITE, because my company's mission is to help people learn to write well at work. And recently, I've been helping lots of companies write better knowledge-based content. I am a writing teacher through and through. I believe that people can develop writing skills at work. Poor writers can become better. And I know that if we're going to follow the best practices Nicola laid out for us in such a motivating and clear way, it was a beautiful world she described. If we're going to live in that world, we need people who can compose good knowledge-based content. So my half of our webinar this evening here, I'm in the Washington, D.C. area, and it's about 10:30 p.m. My half of the webinar will be about how to write good knowledge-based content. And I'm so interested to learn that you believe the most important fix to your knowledge-based content is to help people follow steps in a process. That's extremely practical and it can be done. This is a point I probably don't need to make too urgently because you joined this webinar. You probably already believe this, but badly written knowledge-based content costs you a lot of money. And we did some rough estimates with USU. We paired and we estimated that the cost of time to create an article, if the writer or the article creator earns $30 an hour, we need $15 an hour to create that article. If we need to update it, we need half again as much time at $7.50. Now we're at $22.50. If we need the agent, the frontline customer service agent, to use that article, we're spending $14 on that person's time. And if the article costs someone time every time they use it, we roughly calculated the time waste of 5 minutes per use. And I didn't even do a tally because the story is clear. Badly written our KB content does cost you money, real dollars. We can rough in, we can calculate those costs. But this badly written content, sorry, friends, I'm frozen here. The badly written content costs you in other ways. It costs you in ways Nicola described. It will cost your support agents the time wasted. They can't reuse the content to transfer an answer that they found in the knowledge base, maybe from live chat or maybe to email. They can't transfer the content. They're not accurate when they answer. It costs your customers, if they have access to the knowledge base, one bad experience can cost them the trust they had in your information quality. Customers aren't stalwart. They're not strong when it comes to trying and trying again with poor knowledge-based content. They'll try and they'll give up. It will cost their willingness to self-serve. They'll stop doing it. And finally, for your business, your automation, chatbots, any form of AI is going to be drawing from some central source of knowledge. If that knowledge is poorly written, you'll have a garbage in, garbage out problem. So poor quality, poorly written knowledge-based content is extremely costly. Even if we don't estimate all the dollar costs implied here, we know they're quite high. So let me show you 5 common types of badly written knowledge-based articles. But I want to reassure you, I'm not going to just show you bad content. I'm going to show you how to fix it also. These will probably be familiar to you. I hope the fixes are motivating. I found listening to Nicola so motivating tonight. She described a best practices world for managing knowledge. I want to live in that world. So let me show you some best practices for making individual articles better quality and easier to read. Here's the first one. And side note, I want you to know that all of the knowledge-based content I'm showing you is authentic. I've sometimes changed the phone numbers 111-222-333. That's not the real phone number, but these are all real knowledge-based articles. This comes from a city, a jurisdiction's knowledge base, public-facing knowledge base. And though this is not a very long knowledge-based article, there are no scannable features. There's the title of the article and then a big block of text. People who are reading quickly need to be able to scan. Here's the same content with some scannable features. We have 3 headings, which make it easy for the reader to see the sections of the content. And within the permit fees section, we have 2 bullet points. The fee for each $1,000 is this. The certificate of occupancy costs this amount. So first way to fix a bad knowledge-based article is to make sure that the reader can scan it. The eye can move quickly they can find the information they need. Here's another really important way to make poorly written knowledge base content better, and that is to give the knowledge base article a better name. Here are 3 knowledge base articles that are mere topics. As much as we can, we want to get a verb into the knowledge base article, or we want the knowledge base article to include a question word, such as why or how, because question words are extremely concrete in meaning, and they will give the reader a better idea of the content that will follow. So web conference host key is just the topic. Do I know how to install it? Do I know how to include more people with this key? These titles are not good enough. They're too simple. They don't offer enough information. Here are the improved article titles, not just the what. These are full titles, not just a topic. So web conference host key becomes how to use the web conference host key. Non-operational facilities, which is cryptic to the extreme, becomes eliminating non-operational facilities from the leasing inventory by this certain date. So just like when you have guests in your home, you're always sure that the entry has been vacuumed and that the glass is clean. You want the article title to be extremely clear. And the few tips for writing a great title for a knowledge base article, I've listed these tips at the bottom of the slide. You could use a question. How do I set up VPN on Linux? You could use a gerund phrase, the ing word, setting up VPN on Linux, or you could use an adverbial phrase, which is a partial question, but without the question mark. Okay? Make the title really clear. Next. The steps are confusing. If the action isn't clear, will compound the problem that you mentioned in our poll. You said your most acute problem with the quality of your knowledge base content is that people might not be able to easily follow the steps. These steps are confusing. The title of this knowledge base article is adequate, How to Edit a Travel Authorization. But you see, the writer chose bullet points and then started to kind of count them, First you do this, next you do this. As we well know, if steps need to be completed in a sequence, they should be numbered. Here's a better version. Same content with 7 clear steps. Log in, go, click, edit, click, save, and wrap up. So it is much easier to see when we have numbered the steps that must be completed in sequence. Here's another knowledge base writing problem that can be somewhat a little more difficult to fix, but fix it you must. In this example, you're reading the 4 steps in a quick start guide to setting up an online photo fix-up tool. It's a piece of software, kind of a widget in Photoshop or something like that. In this case, I want to show you that we have 5 clear steps, but the writer keeps interrupting themselves with these notes. So step 1, go to this web address. Step 2, click login, and then we have a long note. Is that note about clicking login? Could that note be presented outside the numbered steps? Because when we're trying to follow steps, it's much easier to follow them if it's simply the step. In step 3, once you get logged in, click search images, provide the file name, and now we have a note about being a first-time user. So these notes are much less interruptive if you can gather them and group them before the steps than if you keep embedding them in each step. Here is a much better presentation of the notes. In this version, the writer has gathered up the notes out of the steps and offered the same information. There's a kind of discussion paragraph at the beginning. Whether you log in with your personal or corporate username and password, you'll have access to the same features. First-time users must accept the terms and conditions. And now here come the steps. 5 clean steps without interruptions. The next type of knowledge base improvement you could make is to make it easier for people to take action when they read the knowledge base article. This knowledge base article is one sentence. So I consider this quite a phenom. This is a one sentence article that's poorly written. When you see the title, how do I report a code violation, a building code violation? That's a very clear title. The explanation isn't hard to understand, but how do I create the service request? How do I call or email the code enforcement division? The information is descriptive, yes, but there's no easy way to take action, and it will be frustrating for people if they have to struggle with this. So here is a much better, such a simple edit, but this is a much better way to help the users, the readers, take action on the information you've shared. Another way I hope to motivate you to write high quality knowledge-based content is to remind you how much easier the content is to maintain. Now, we all heard Nicola talk through the very careful set of steps that assure information quality in a knowledge base. And she herself said that ensuring information quality is time consuming. It is certainly required, certainly worthwhile, but it is time consuming. I want to assure you that if you write your knowledge base articles well the first time, then maintaining them is also easier. Well, why is that true? Because if your content, for example, your procedures, follow a consistent pattern or template, then if you have to make a change across a set of them, you know where that change will be made in the template. If you know that you have committed to grouping any notes at the beginning and just giving the steps, that's a consistent pattern or template, you may update and maintain a certain set of articles by only changing the notes or only changing step 3. You may have less narrower changes because the information pattern is consistent. Next, if you write good quality knowledge-based content that's broken into sections that uses headings to announce the different sections of the content, you can consider each article a collection of modules, kind of information modules. And these modules, when they're well written, may be quite easy to move around, kind of like rearranging the knickknacks on your mantelpiece. You can move small pieces. It's when you have to remodel the whole room that there's a lot of work. And finally, if you've committed to writing procedures in a step-by-step way in easy to see and follow numbered steps, that structure is much easier to edit. We add steps, we take them away, but we don't have to rebuild the entire article. So I hope you're motivated to write it right, because maintaining the articles is easier when you've written it right. In our first poll, more than half of you said that what you really want for Christmas is a person who will be responsible for managing the knowledge base. I want to urge you to identify a person who will be responsible for writing and editing the knowledge-based content. Oh no, not every single article. That's not what I'm suggesting, but that there will be a keeper of the content, somebody whose gifts and talents are definitely editorial, a good technical writer, a person who's got stamina and faith that the knowledge-based content can be maintained quite well. So if we look at the various roles that people can take, we still want one person in charge of that content. Point 1, everyone who uses the knowledge base should be responsible for identifying the articles that work and the ones that don't. Just like Nicola said, anyone who can give feedback will be more motivated to give feedback if you act on that feedback. Everyone who uses the knowledge base should be able to give feedback. Individual users, everyone should be able to propose edits to a knowledge base article, even if they don't have the permission to make those edits final. As you can see in this list, we're getting increased levels of responsibility for actually writing. I would like you to think about hiring someone with the title IT communicator or knowledge-based communicator. This is an author who's dedicated to the task of writing content for your knowledge base. The writer is a subject matter expert on how to present the information, but not on the information themselves. This person is a writing expert and the person who might be that keeper of your knowledge base. And my last comment, I'd like to leave you the structure of newspaper publishing as a metaphor. To get a newspaper published, we have a whole lot of people doing different roles. We have readers whose interest and engagement's paramount. We have journalists, reporters, the writers. We have the people who are interviewed for stories. We have the editors, we have the publishers, and no one says, well, that's an awful lot of people involved in getting the newspaper out. We need everyone in these roles. And your knowledge base also needs users, it needs writers, it needs editors, reviewers, subject matter experts, as a whole community of people who bring that knowledge base together. So with that point, I'm going to leave two smiling faces here, and I think we're ready to open up for questions.
We are, Leslie. Thank you so much. So we're going to run a poll while the Q&A is running, because we know you guys can do two things. But before we start, we have a question from Michael. And the question is, when creating a knowledge base, how do you start getting the knowledge into the base if the person is not a subject matter expert on the information?
Are you happy for me to take this one, Leslie?
Oh,
yes,
please.
I am. Yes, I am. Go right ahead.
Beautiful. So customer driven has a lot of experience, I suppose, in that, given that we are not subject matter experts in the organizations that we work with. So we've worked in a whole heap of industries, and we never know when we're going in exactly what that is. Now, it's not to say you need to outsource to customer driven. I mean, you're welcome to, but it is based on the structure that we put in place. It can definitely work in an organization as well. So where we see organizations who do use their knowledge manager as the subject matter expert, the reason we suggest that this is not sufficient is that when, for example, if I use my life cycle, I came from as an agent from a contact center, and I moved into that contact center's knowledge management team. And so for the first 3-4 months, I had great up-to-date knowledge, and I could easily point out when things were wrong, and I could update it based on the knowledge that I had from when I was in the contact center. But as my time went on and I was focused on the presentation of the knowledge, my actual knowledge of what was going on in the contact center was slowly dwindling, I suppose. And I didn't have that, on the ground experience that I had previously had, which is why we always suggest that, yes, your knowledge managers will know a lot about what's going on in your business, but they should not be your subject matter experts. So to answer your question, Michael, I think it was, in order to do that, what we do is we actually work really closely with the people that are identified as the subject matter experts for the particular process that you're working on. So, if there's a new product coming out, we would work with the product managers, and we would know what information we need to present, because as the subject matter expert on presenting the information and those templates, we know what we need to fill it in, but we are asking the questions of the subject matter experts, the people who are actually designing and developing that process or that product, to pull that information out. And that can either be done sitting down face to face and doing like an interview kind of thing. Now that can be quite strenuous, or depending on people's time. It's generally the fastest way though to really get that information out, because you can get those real-time answers. Alternatively, your KM expert could be putting in the bones of what they understand, and then just putting a whole heap of questions into that content to say, how do we do this? What does this mean? Frontline need to know this. Can you please answer the questions? And then using the workflow through the tool, you get your subject matter expert to actually answer those questions and give you that information that you can then edit and update throughout the content. So there is a few different options, and if it's not documented content, then your workshops and your interviews are generally an easy way to capture that straight into the tool.
Thanks, Nicola. So Nathan would like to know whether there are any tips to evolve any article as you go. So for instance, if you want information out ASAP, so you have a question and answer table, how do you then put a plan in place to fit that back into your structure?
I'll have a quick answer there, and then I'll turn to you, Nicola. Every piece of content should have a review date on it. And I would say that if you, admittedly, Nathan, I believe you're admitting that sometimes we get an article out there that perhaps falls short of writing best practices, or doesn't fit the high quality of other content in the knowledge base because you need this content so quickly, that should have a shorter shelf life before it's reviewed and made final according to the standards you use for all the other content. So the plan, I would say, let the software back up your plan. The software, you intend to review that ad hoc article within 2 or 3 weeks, and let the software identify that as needing review within that short period of time. Nicola, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely situations where we have clients call us and say, for databases that we're managing, and say, hey, we need to get this out ASAP. There's this critical time-sensitive thing going. Generally, the way we combat that, rather than creating an article that we know doesn't have all the information and isn't up to scratch, we'd start off with a communication item to say, we're aware of this problem, and these are the steps that you can take in the interim while we either resolve the problem or we come out with the full steps for you. But this is what you need to know now in order to handle any inquiries that are coming through. So one of the pieces of our wheel that I did skip is around communications, and that being a feature that the tools, best practice tools, will support, so that you can actually communicate in the one place as well. Then as more information comes to light, you can update that communication and give more information as it's coming. So it's kind of a real-time rolling dynamic piece of content. And then once you've got the full picture, because generally what you see is we only have snippets of information when these issues are coming up and when these really time-sensitive comms are needing to go out. So once we've got the full picture, then we can create the article that we need. And sometimes as well, it's around assessing, is this new article needed quickly? Is it going to be needed long-term, or is this just because there's a short-term issue? And if it is short-term, then there is, I suppose, a bit of weighing up the benefit of creating an entire article if it's only going to be needed for 3-4 days while we work through this, because they can refer back to that comms while it's in the system.
Yes.
So yeah, there's some things that you can balance up, but yeah, certainly if you are going out with an article that you know is not right, then certainly putting in those reminders and those review dates as soon as you can to get that updated.
Indeed, and don't tell yourself it's okay if we don't update it. Admit that it needs to be updated and written officially and fully well, even if you got it out there quickly.
Yes, definitely.
Guys, there's some fantastic questions coming in. So we've got lots to get through, but we might get to them. But anyone we don't get to, Nicola and Leslie will certainly respond post the webinar. So Shani would like to know, I have plans to move my knowledge base over to something easier to use, quick to find, more stable platform. I wanted to know how you felt on knowledge bases kept on Excel. Nicola, I think this might be one for you.
It might be my alley. I would certainly suggest that it's probably not your best opportunity. There's a lot of contemporary knowledge management solutions out there that will do the job much better. Obviously not everyone can go to those types of things, but I would certainly suggest that having a think about what features and functionality you require in a knowledge base, and then I suppose assessing that against what you can do in Excel. So it's certainly something that we would probably suggest is not going to be suitable for your contact center. It's not going to have all the features to make it easy for your users to find the information that they need. So I would probably steer away if I could, but it certainly could do the job depending on your contact center and your situations as well. So.
Yeah, I think Excel is typically known as content management as opposed to knowledge management, which is next level. Thanks for that, Nicola. Chirag would like to know, are there any best practices recommended for communicating any immediate changes which won't reflect in your knowledge base?
Yeah, I think I sort of touched on this a little bit in one of the previous questions around having a feature in a tool that can allow you to communicate to your contact center quickly. There's tools that will notify your agents with a pop-up to say there's something you need to go and check so that they get it quickly, and you can do it so that it is something that is flagged urgently for them. Those comms, I suppose, come with their own template again. So we would usually recommend very clear headings to say what is happening. So why am I being interrupted in my day-to-day life to be told about this? What do I need to do? So how does this actually impact me, and what are the steps you want me to do? And sometimes those comms have more warning than others. So there might also be a step that says what documents have changed as a result of this. But where we're talking about urgent comms, you usually haven't had a chance to go through and update anything. So you can say, stay tuned, or, updates will come shortly kind of thing. So
one of the successes in that type of communication that's outside the KB is that the people who receive it expect it to come outside the KBs, because they shouldn't be surprised about the channel that the communication director is choosing for that particular message. They should have been trained and shown to expect, hey, if we have a giant outage, I'm not creating a knowledge base article on that. I will communicate with you another way.
Thanks, Leslie. Thanks, Nicola. One more question, and this, Leslie, I think this is particularly for you. Do you believe people who aren't good writers can become good enough writers to contribute content to the knowledge base?
Yes, absolutely. That's basically my life's work. Yes, I do believe that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they can be taught.
Yes, indeed. I think perhaps writing poetry or fiction is a mix of gift and practice. But I think writing knowledge-based articles, most people can do adequate practice and become really quite good at it, especially if they understand how the information will be used. It's very difficult to write well if you're writing in a vacuum. But if you're not writing in a vacuum, if you personally know or have done the work of the people who use the knowledge-based content, it is possible for most people to write well.
Thank you. Nicola, Andrew would like to know, in regards to analytics, is there a rule of thumb on how often the data should be checked?
It really will depend. I mean, the organisations that we work with, we always set up monthly governance meetings so that we're going back and presenting that type of data that I was talking about to our clients on a monthly basis. And we make sure that we are really giving them that deep analysis, I suppose. So monthly is generally what we feel is a nice sweet spot. But from my time as a knowledge management can't even talk today, as a knowledge manager within an organisation, you could be reporting things like comms. Are people reading their comms? We were reporting every 24 hours, particularly with those urgent comms, so that we could say, hey guys, we posted this urgently. There was this major problem or major something that you needed to know about. And you haven't read it yet, and you have been online with what's going on here. So it can really depend, and I suppose it will just depend on what type of information you're looking for as to the timing that you would do. But generally for that deep dive analysis, I would say a monthly report is generally sufficient.
Thanks, Nicola. We do have an anonymous attendee, which means we can't come back to them after the webinar with a question. And they want to know whether there are any tips on lowering the number of search items with no results apart from changing the titles. Most of the time, agents like using the search field instead of checking the titles to find info that they want. However, most of the time they keep misspelling the keywords, and there's 1,000 ways to misspell things. So they're not getting the info they want. Any tips there?
Yeah, a little bit's coming to mind. So ideally, we work with a lot of applications, I suppose, that come back with a did you mean search at the very least. So when we were talking about that Google search capability, I suppose the capability for the tool to at least acknowledge, I think there's a typo, and this is a similar type of thing. So if a new tool is an option, then certainly looking for an application that has that type of capability. In regards to, I suppose, mistyping and things like that, I mean, I have seen organisations put in the common spelling because, they did have some of those terms that are just constantly misspelled. You can put them in, I suppose, as a keyword. So the system is acknowledging that. And then I suppose as well, there's also a bit of a search behavior piece that you can do as well. So depending on how your search works, we've been in with organizations and they were so used to their old system where they had to write an entire sentence to get their document to come back. So when they did move into one of these contemporary solutions, we were seeing these search results that were, 10, 15 words long. And we're trying to explain to them, we only need small keywords, and you can get used to, like your Google search, saying 3 random words that eventually, will pull things up. So you can do a bit of a search behavior piece as well and explain your search to users so that they can start to identify what they need. So is it that the keyword needs to appear in your heading for it to appear with a search result, or is it going to search the actual data, the document as well, to return anything that's had that keyword within the content as well? So sometimes just a little bit of an explanation, I suppose, as to how your search is working can really support your business.
I would go beyond an explanation and do a training. The behavior change you're describing, I think, would come as a result of training. And I think this is a problem worth fixing quickly or working on quickly, because there's no quicker way to encourage people to get a little information stash on a wrinkled Post-it than for them to get 0 search results. This may be a case where you want to basically keyword stuff the articles, and especially the most frequently used ones. You don't want, even if users are terrible spellers, you don't want them coming up with no search results. That's too discouraging.
Yeah. Well, unbelievably, we are at the hour. In fact, we're past the hour. So with that, Nicola, any closing comments from your good self?
Not at all, I suppose. I know that there are still quite a few questions coming through. So we do have our contact details on the slide that Leslie is presenting at the moment. So I'm more than happy for anyone to reach out directly to me if we haven't got to any questions. And as you said, Fiona, I'm sure Leslie and I can answer these ones, and somehow once the webinar's ended.
They will certainly be provided to you. And thank you, Leslie, as well. So with that, I'd like to say a massive thank you to USU and Customer Driven, and to eWrite for being part of today's webinar. We're getting some wonderful comments from the attendees today. Thank you, Leslie, for staying up way past my bedtime. And wherever you are, please stay safe, take care of yourself, and have a wonderful rest of your day. See you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.